Chairman Paldita.
Present.
Vice Chair Brown.
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Good. Absent. Member Hughes.
Here.
Member Armstrong.
Here.
Member Knight. Member Knight, we see you, but we cannot hear you. I'll note his presence and work on the audio.
Clerk, is that everyone?
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Vice Chair Brown, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Can you hear me? I'm on.
We're doing the pledge. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item 3, Allison, will you please handle the Title 6?
CYMPO complies with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and related non-discrimination statutes and regulations in all programs and activities. Members of the public may review the CYMPO Title VI plan and submit a self-identification survey by accessing the CYMPO website.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 4, call the public. This item is to provide an opportunity for presentation of comments by the public on subjects not on the agenda. Please complete a request for public input card and submit to CYMPO staff prior to the beginning of the meeting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Any members of the public attending virtually wishing to address the board may request to provide a written comment by using the quote, raise my hand or question and answer comments feature available through the webinar. This time, is there anyone out in the public that would like to speak? Knowing that there's none, Allison, do you have anyone online?
I see no comments online.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll call the public and moving on to item 5, consideration of possible action to approve the October 19th, 2022 executive board regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes from that meeting, September 27th or October 19th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Let the record show Treasurer Secretary Good is present. Moving on to item 6, consideration of possible action to approve the meeting minutes for the August 11th, 2021 and September 22nd, 2022 strategic planning workshops.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Moving on to item 7, executive director's update, Mr. Gallegos.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just a couple announcements here for you. A couple of tack changes to the positions in the departure of Norm Davis. He was the chair representing the town of Prescott Valley, and City of Prescott was the vice chair, Ian Mattingly. So in discussions with the TAC and various personal situations and professional situations, kind of here's our rundown. It's been a bit of a change. So I want to thank Dan Sherry for being able to step up to represent Yavapai County, and he will be the chair for the remainder of this calendar year and next calendar year. Mayor Hughes serves on the TAC, both on the TAC and the executive board, and he offered and the TAC accepted for him to be the vice chair on the technical committee. And then I think the final change with the TAC is representation for the town of Prescott Valley will be the town manager, Gilbert Davidson, who is here. I want to acknowledge Gilbert. Thank you for being a representative for the town on the TAC. His alternate will be Ryan Jr. and staff I know will be participating with Boyd Robertson and Ron Pine and others. So again, some changes as it's regarding the TAC. One of the other things, Dan Sherry was serving as the liaison to the EMAC committee. Since he's the chair, he's asked if another TAC member would go ahead and work with the EMAC group. I want to thank Frank Marbury for missing the meeting and being volunteered in his absence and voted to represent the EMAC. So thank you again, Frank, for that. And I believe my final announcement is I have a certificate for Allison for her years of service of 5 years from Yavapai County. So, Mr. Chair, if you wanted to present that to her, and if we could take a picture after the meeting, if that's okay with the board, and we'll keep things going. But if you want to present it to her at the end, we'll take a picture with you all. But we really want to thank you, Allison, for your 5 years of service. We know you're the backbone of CYMPO. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. If you have any questions or comments on the board.
Anything for Mr. Gario? Moving on, item 8, Rural Transportation Advocacy Council update. Mr. Adam, is he out there?
Yes.
Oh, he's here. I'm looking for you outside in here.
Thank you. And I know my voice probably sounds horrible, and it's probably more painful for you all to hear than it is for me. Can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Now I'm going to sound even worse. Okay. Well, thanks. And the dust is sort of somewhat settled from last Tuesday. Still quite a bit that is unresolved, but going into Tuesday, we had back in Washington a situation where Democrats controlled everything back there. And here in the state, we had Republicans controlling everything at the state level. And that has changed on both fronts. So we're going to have a split partisan control in both places with the Republicans picking up the House. There was a lot of speculation that Republicans would also take the Senate. They did not succeed in that effort. I got to tell you, Arizona actually had a role in both of those fronts. We had a going in, the House delegation was split 5-4 Democrat. And with Tuesday's outcome, we had 2 Republican-controlled seats in this, 2 Democrat-controlled seats in the state that flipped Republican. So we're now 5-4 Republican. And so there's still about 5 seats across the country that haven't been decided yet. But it's Republicans are pretty much, depending on which outlet you look at, they've either got that 218 that is required for majority, or they're at 217 with about 12 or 13 that are undecided. But I believe at least 4 of those leaning Republican right now. So Republicans should take control. Remains to be seen to what majority. It will be relatively slim. In fact, I'll tell you that it will definitely be less than the margin that Kevin McCarthy received in becoming the next speaker, where, again, another Arizona role, Andy Biggs actually challenged him for the speakership. McCarthy won with I believe it was 181-33 vote. But where that's significant is that there were 33 Republicans that voted against Speaker-elect McCarthy. And again, that Republican majority in the House is going to be far below 30. And so that will be extremely contentious. It's certainly not the only chamber, if you look at the federal and the state, that do have that level of, I guess, disagreement amongst themselves. And so it's going to be, I think, just naturally bringing in the split control is going to make it extremely difficult to pass things, and with the lack of relative unity within the caucuses, going to make it that much tougher. At the state level, we knew that there was going to be a tremendous changeover in the people serving, just because of there was a large number of incumbents that ran for statewide office and ran for Congress. There were quite a few that lost in the primary, and with the redistricting, we had quite a few incumbents in a situation where they were running against other incumbents. And so we're going to have more than half of both chambers with new people. But at the leadership position, this is where things that we're starting to see it pan out. Most of the, with the exception of the House Republicans, the other three caucuses did meet over the weekend to vote on leadership. It's very interesting on the, with the Senate Republicans, they allowed three members who were losing at the time, two of them by 6 points. They allowed them to vote in the caucus for leadership next year. And in fact, all of those three folks, I believe at least two of those races have been called against them. And while that is a secret ballot, Warren Peterson from Maricopa County basically won, and it's heavily speculated that those three votes had a major, that he would not have won without those three votes. So there's a very strong possibility that when they go into session and they formally vote on who their leaders are, that you could potentially see that revisited. I think he is doing all he can to solidify his position. He's already starting to appoint the committee chairs. That's only going to help solidify votes for him. But we'll see. But I think at a minimum, it's probably not going to bring a whole lot of unity to that caucus, and with the roughly at least half of the body that did not support him in that position. Another unfortunate impact, I think, for Greater Arizona and also for transportation was that his main competitor was David Gowan, who is from the Sierra Vista area, who has been engaged and supportive of spending on infrastructure. And with that loss, not only is he not in leadership, he will also not be the appropriations chair. Senator Peterson has already appointed one of his supporters to that role. So that's where we are in the, and I should have mentioned, before the election, we were very closely split, 31-29 in the House and 16-14 in the Senate for Democrats. And when you went through all those changes, that is still the margin as of today when you look at the elections. But there is that change in leadership and change in the committee chairs. On the House side, just on yesterday, the House Republicans voted, and they elected Ben Toma to be their next speaker. And just, I guess, a local note, I think that Representative Wen, Representative Toma are very close. And so I think that he will have a lot more pull at the Capitol than he would have otherwise. Remains, I think we're starting to see most of those committee chair appointments. David Farnsworth has been appointed House Transportation Chair. David Farnsworth is he's extremely conservative. I think generally overall, not overly supportive of spending. However, he has been interested and has been engaged when it comes to infrastructure. So I'm not quite sure how that's all going to play out. Remains to be seen. He was also picked over Frank Carroll, who's coming over to the Senate from the House. Frank was the chairman of the House Transportation Committee. So we're basically losing that experience. So basically we've got a brand new speaker, brand new Senate president, brand new chairs of the House and Senate Appropriations Committees, and brand new chairs of the House and Senate Transportation Committees. So a lot of this still needs to play out, but the bottom line is there's going to be a lot of transition. And of course, with a Democrat now in the governor's seat, there's probably going to be a lot more conflict, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to get things done at the state capitol as well with that split government. The one other note that I'll bring up, which I've talked to you before, is on the revenue side. State revenue numbers continue to be phenomenal. Carry forward balance of about 4.7 billion after the last state fiscal year, about 1.5 billion in the state rainy day fund. And through the first quarter of the current year, we're already $500 million over what was forecast. So I think that worst case scenario, if we do encounter a recession and we start to see these numbers drop, we have an incredible buffer with what's in the bank as far as to get us through at least the next year. So I think those are the big points to consider or look at going into next year. If anybody has any questions.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Allen?
Yeah, I just talked, I looked over that list that they put out today in regards to who was in seats and everything. I don't know that the appropriations correct. Who is that?
The appropriations chair in the Senate is going to be John Kavanaugh.
Oh, I know Kavanaugh.
Okay. Oh, in the House, I don't know if that's been decided yet.
It was a name I didn't recognize. I thought it had already been determined. So.
I'll see if I can't track that down, but I have not seen that name.
It's going to be an interesting year because it's going to be, again, we're almost an even split on both the House and the Senate, as far as Republicans, Democrats. We've got the money's there. The question is what it's going to get used for. Democrats are going to obviously push, probably towards education. They're also going to be worried about what they're going to have for question.
Right, and I think it's even more divisive than that because I think there's a lot of acrimony within each caucus. And so, not only is Republican versus Democrat, I think the caucuses, with the members of each party are also some wide areas of disagreement. So I do think that you can't find, if you've got one-time funding that's available, you can't find a better use for it than infrastructure projects. So I think we've got that going for us as far as being a priority. But it's going to be difficult to reach consensus to the degree that they can get the votes to pass virtually anything else. So it's going to be a real interesting year. And I think at this point, I think it's very unpredictable to see what the outcome is going to be, particularly when it comes to passing a budget for next year.
It'll be interesting to see where our representatives end up as well, as far as which assignments they get.
Absolutely. This region has historically had seem to always be in leadership or very prominent positions. And so this is the first time in quite a while that I don't think that's the case. Of course, you've got Senator Bennett back, who was previously the Senate president, but he's coming back as a freshman.
He's, I think, in finance.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Kevin, just a reminder that CYMPO has set priorities. We're working with RTEC on 3 transportation projects that we'll be pursuing again through RTEC. And one of them is the widening of Glassford Hill as a local regional road. And then the other one is State Route 89, excuse me, from 3 to 4 north and 4 to 5 north. Those projects come to around $23 million that CYMPO will be pursuing through RTEC. At least with the last conversation of Representative Wynn and now Senator-elect Bennett and Representative-elect Bliss, they were all on board to sponsor each project. Each of them were on board to sponsor a project. So I know we have a long ways to go in that conversation, but so far I just want to remind the board as to where we stand with them.
It was, I would ditto what you just said, and he, talked to him just recently about it, and they're solidly behind it. They know that's where our priorities are here in CYMPO right now, see what happens. Also, they understand that they're also trying to move forward, Highway 69.
You all have done a terrific job in getting them engaged up front. And I would encourage you to keep that up. Yeah, you're, I think, in really good shape as far as having your delegation behind you.
Looks like that's good. Mr. Adam, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, item 9, transit update. Ms. Stutler.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Brent Stotler, planner with CYMPO. Quick transit update. We've got some new transit planning funds I wanted to highlight for you all. And just a little bit of history, which most of you are aware of. You know that the town of Prescott Valley accepted the CARES Act funds at a 0% local match to launch Yavaline, their new microtransit system. As a part of that, the town of Prescott Valley has become the direct recipient under the 5307, which are the urbanized transit funds that the FTA apportions and allows for competitive grant awards each year. As a part of that, we are allowed to apply for transit planning dollars, and the MPO being a partner of the 5307 direct recipient, we are able to identify transit related plans or plans that would be supported by transit components to be funded through the 5307 direct apportionment. We were able to complete the request for that through Pedro Rodriguez, the town of Prescott Valley's transit development coordinator. He's been very helpful in facilitating that process as the coordinator for those direct recipient funds. And CYMPO is now in receipt of about 200,000 of transit planning funds that we can utilize for future planning efforts. And that will be at the planning status local match of 20%. The plans that we're going to highlight for you that will be supported by those funds are one that you've heard of recently and actually made actions on, the 69 Master Corridor Plan. There is a transit component that we can highlight within that plan to utilize the about $50,000 in transit planning funds. So that will support the 69 Corridor Master Plan fiscal piece. Also, our regional coordination plan, which is basically the plan that allows our human services providers, 5311 systems, pardon me, 5310 systems that provide services for the elderly and disabled population. So we have a coordination plan update that has to happen on an annual basis. So we've also been able to garner $50,000 to support those efforts. And then finally, the balance of the funding, which is about 200,000 in total, that we're receiving through the apportionment is the active transportation plan, which you'll hear more about on the next agenda item. But basically, the balance of those funds, almost $100,000, will go to support the active transportation plan, which will highlight multimodal transportation options in the region, primarily bicycle, pedestrian, and transit connections. So we're really pleased to be able to work with the town of Prescott Valley on these initiatives. And the fact that we have finally tapped some of our 5307 master apportionment monies is very encouraging. I think you all probably are aware that we receive about $1.6 million annually in transit funding from FTA. To date, we have been sending all of that funding back. Historically, it was about 1.2, but recently, due to our population adjustments, we're at about 1.6. So with Prescott Valley in the direct recipient status, we're able to tap some of this funding and actually use it to support our broader planning efforts. And we're very pleased to be able to alert the board that that's exactly what's happening. Any questions on those funds? Okay. Quick update. I talked to Pedro earlier today. He actually also appeared at our local coordination committee meeting yesterday to update local service providers on how Yavaline is going. Week 1 was 4.2 rides. Week 9 ended with 42 rides. There has not been a net decrease in weekly rides, which is a great indicator. And we'll invite Pedro to come and give you guys a more detailed download of Yavaline statistics and a little presentation. But I'm very encouraged by the fact that about 25% of total rides are allocated to rides to and from employment. So this is functioning exactly as all of us had hoped. This is starting to support our local workforce moving to and from their jobs. There are several other metrics that are being tracked, but that was one of the most encouraging metrics that I took away from Pedro's data this week.
I just want to add, I think we just hit 1,000 rides just a couple weeks ago, so that was pretty encouraging. And Pedro said we're about 200 a week,
Yeah.
about 80% capacity.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging.
And that is all of my transit update, unless you have any other questions.
Are we at our first quarter on this transit?
Yes.
Or
Federal fiscal 22. Allison and I just.
well, we haven't done December, that's why I'm asking, are we doing this on a federal fiscal calendar or what are we doing?
Federal fiscal.
Okay, so we'll get some kind of report after January and we'll do first quarter.
Yeah, we'll take a deeper dive into the statistics as we
That'd
get a
be
little
good.
bit more.
Tell one that I was very impressed when, you know, we get at the managers meeting and the update we had.
Anything else for Ms. Butler? Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item 10, introduction of scope of work for active transportation plan. Mr. Gallego, I believe this, you're going to lead it off and then Ms. Butler.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'll just do a brief lead and turn it back over to Bryn. Excuse me. About a year ago, CYMPO staff had applied for a grant opportunity for active transportation plan, and we were awarded monies for it. Long story short, we do have about $200,000 set aside for what is titled an active transportation plan. I would give it a subtitle that it's really focused on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure within the CYMPO planning area. We have not done it at least from a regional standpoint, and in doing a little bit of research, I don't know that any city or town has done specifically that. I do want to be clear that all of our transportation plans are multimodal. So like our regional transportation plan that we do every 5 years does include bicycle and pedestrian components evaluation. In our safety plans, bicycle and pedestrian is included in that. What this will do is it will solely focus on that. It's going to serve two purposes. It'll serve obviously the regional aspect, but it's also going to be able to support each of the local public agencies, being the 4 cities and towns and Yavapai County. And it's going to work with you and your staff to evaluate what you currently have and what some opportunities are for what you want to see in your area to be the next evolution of whatever it is. So I just want to be clear here that this isn't a one size fits all by no means. We understand there's vast differences from some of the downtown Prescott urbanized area to some of the more rural parts, if you will, in Dewey, Humboldt, or even Chino Valley. So we're going to take it on a case by case basis. We're going to look at what you have for either shoulder, bicycle, pedestrian, evaluate what's there, and then try and look at what the next step could be. We do have an opportunity to work also with your various school districts and see if there is an opportunity again to have partnerships moving forward. So with that said, I've asked Bryn to come and just introduce you to the bullet points that we have so far. She will come back formally at your first meeting in February and ask you to consider, I'll ask you to consider working with a consultant that at that point we would have selected to do this plan. We expect the plan to last about 12 months. And Bryn will walk you through some of the bullet points that her and the TAC have come up with. And we open the conversation today that if you have any additional things to add or questions, now is we start the process, and 3 months from now, Bryn will come back with a final scope. Bryn?
Thank you, Benny. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we're excited to launch this active transportation plan. I think this is long overdue in our region, and each of our jurisdictions, member agencies are expanding multimodal options within their respective jurisdictions. And I think it's something that all of our attention is on to a certain extent. We're happy to prepare this, what I'm calling a mini scope at this point. And basically what you've been provided with in your packet is bullet points to identify the sections of the plan that we know will be most important as of our current scope of work. And of course, there's some very common identifiers in there, goals and vision. We want to know what we're trying to do and what are we looking for in the long term. We want to inventory all of the existing facilities in each of our jurisdictions and in the unincorporated area. We want to look at origin and destination. Where are people going? Where are they leaving from and where are they going to? Obviously, this land use and development planning plays a big role in this because we can start to work with developers on the front end of their plans to hopefully incorporate some of these facilities within master plan communities in the region. We touched on schools. Safety is a big component. We've got an active safety plan going on, and that data will feed this plan. So we will have very current safety information to work with. We want to identify a complete network. So even though our individual jurisdictions are very different in the way that they look and the way that you might ride or walk, we want to make sure that we're looking at using a regional lens to also make this plan operate for all jurisdictions in the region and the unincorporated areas. Part of that process is looking for the gaps in the network and then looking for opportunities for new facilities. There's a few things that are just a part of all plans these days. We're going to have an equity analysis. We will have a project list, and we will be developing that project list with the help of the consultant with an eye towards delivery. We want things that really can be implemented and so that you can see them in the built environment and people can start using them. Beyond that, we have a timeline that we've developed. And so basically, I'll just recap where we are right now. In November, until January, we're continuing to develop this scope. If there's anything in that bullet point list that jumps out at you as needing either a subcomponent, or if you don't see something that you think should be there, we're very interested in hearing that from the board. And of course, we're working with the TAC ongoing on the development of the scope. So now to January, fleshing out the scope a little more. We will work with the EMAC and the TAC working group in January of 2023. We will bring a full RFP and with a proposed action to the TAC and the board in February. And of course, then there's the typical review of consultant submittals, scoring, figuring out which consultant we're leaning towards, and having all of the official actions that would put the consultant team into place. Project kickoff will be hopefully May of 2023 with a 12-month plan period. So we're looking to complete that plan in April to May of 2024. The next step for us before we get to you all reviewing the actual RFP and the full scope is that the member jurisdictions need to help us a little bit with providing their list of recognized stakeholders when it comes to multimodal transportation. In the case of the city of Prescott, that's the PB-TAC committee. Other jurisdictions may have committees or subcommittees that we're not aware of that actually address some of these issues. And so we're interested in those folks being identified as stakeholders. We want to get a good stakeholder list together so that there's good public participation throughout the planning process. So with that, I'm free to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Brandon. Just really quick, Mr. Chair, also again, two deliverables out of this. So I just want to remind the board, we're not intending to only have regional projects in this, but you will get local projects in this. Again, CYMPO may not take leadership beyond the plan on this, but we do want to be able to turn over to each of the cities, towns, and the county a prioritized list of projects that may have some level of cost associated with it, and also opportunities to fund it through federal transportation funds. So with all that said, Mr. Chair, we're pretty excited to be able to deliver that hopefully in the next year, where Bryn and I are happy to take some additional questions and comments if there are any.
Do you have any questions?
How's that? That's good. So any of the local planning projects that might fit into the scope, would they be available for design cost support or actual infrastructure funding?
So part of the plan is going to be that project list And those projects identified are going to be highly deliverable projects. There will be an implementation piece to the plan as well. As far as the unique locale, the cities and towns and other jurisdictions, we will be working directly with your representatives on the projects that you are prioritizing. And we may have, further options with funding opportunities by the time we get to that point in the plan. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think as you develop that, our local project concerns probably will be more clearly identified.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, Mayor Good too, we do intend in the scope of asking for some design, some planning level design information, depending on what your priorities are. And then again, what are opportunities to actually deliver that? And I keep referencing the school, but with Brent and I do have a meeting set up with the Prescott School Superintendent, Chino and Humboldt both. Because those particular areas tend to rise to the top when it comes for opportunities. And we want to visit with your respective planning, public works and school districts. And again, we do want to deliver some things that we hope you can be able to follow through after them.
Anything else? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 11, review, discussion, and possible action to approve a 12-month extension of the professional service agreement with Sparklight for the distracted driving education campaign. Mr. Gallagher?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I want to say we are entering into the 7/8th year of this particular campaign. Just a brief history. I think a couple people were around back in the day. I'll pick on Supervisor Brown was back around at the beginning of this time, and very proud to say that we have made an impact in getting the messages out. Thank you to all of you who really started by creating some local ordinances about distracted driving. Thanks to partnership with Senator Fan and what went on to the state of Arizona and what ultimately became law. I think CYMPO should take a lot of credit for just continuing to get the message out. As you know, in our meetings, we tend to focus on the engineering and the planning, but another aspect that we decided to embark upon was education. And we know this is one of those things that just has to be an ongoing conversation. No matter how much you remind people, it continues to be a problem. But 8 years ago, CYMPO took the mission that we're going to be a part of not only the engineering and support those in law enforcement, but get the education message out. So about 8 years ago, we started with a safe driving campaign, primarily focused on distracted driving. Over the years, many of you and others have starred in those particular videos that we've done. We've done about 6 videos a year. We've worked with Sparklight. 2 years ago, the CYMPO board agreed to make an agreement for the next 4 years, but the way the board did at that particular time was they agreed a 2-year agreement with the possibility to renew it for another 2 years, taking it on 1 year at a time. So this particular contract that we have has been complete, the first, if you will, the 2 years of the 4 years. So we are coming to you to renew for another 12 months. It ended back in July. But I went ahead and tabled it to now, and the reason for that is just allowing the transition of staff. As you know, Bryn's come back, Lindsay's joined us, so we had a lot of transition, and it was a challenge for us to continue the campaign. So it's been on a hiatus for the last 6 months. When we start, if you approve this contract, we do have a video that's ready to go that has already been filmed. It just needs to air, and it features Prescott Police Chief Bonnie and Prescott Fire Chief Dura, again with a safe driving message. A few months ago, I talked to Supervisor Brown. We have him slated at some point this next year for a safe driving commercial. I've yet to give him the script, so we'll give that to him. And then one closing thing, Bryn referenced the bicycle pedestrian group in Prescott. Through the safe driving campaign, I did offer them one commercial in the next year, just to bring greater awareness to vehicles and bicyclists on the road together. So with that said, you do have a contract that is for 12 months, $50,000. Will get us about 6 videos that would come out, one video every 2 months, if you will. And Sparklight is who we've been working with for the last 7 years. They're the local media company, and this is again on TV and social media, targeted media. So with that said, Mr. Chair, happy to take questions or comments.
You had me at Chairman Brown was going to be starring in a commercial. No, Vinny, I think it's great. This is something that we can't quantify in regards to how effective it is or how it's not. It is not working, but if it just works one time, then it's well worth the $50,000. So, Chairman Brown.
I was just gonna say that, you know, we got 2 years left to go on this contract, a year and 21 months or so. So over the course of the remainder of this year, maybe we finish up what we've already got on this drawing. And then the following year, let's take some of the different approach, possibly, you know, like we're talking about, you know, bringing in pedestrian safety and, you know, people walking with cell phones, walking around, they're looking at the cell phone, they're not watching where they're going, watching across red lights and everything else. Go, oops. So same thing with bicyclists and people now on these, I'm gonna call them mopeds for lack of a better term. Motorized bicycles, I watch this all day. No signals, no nothing, going right up the road faster than the traffic, in and out, in and out. He's gonna end up being on, you know, probably a certain tape sooner or later. But, you know, there are different other things we can look at besides just cell phone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Supervisor Brown. Absolutely, you're now part of the writing team, so welcome to the creative process. We'll welcome you. With that said, I do want to
I
make
gotta show it.
I do want to make just one clarification. A primary focus has been distracted driving, but over the years, Supervisor Brown just reminded me that we have done other types of commercials. We have done messages about aggressive driving, about speeding. We worked with Mayor Pelguda last year on impaired driving. So with that said, absolutely welcome to other areas that you may see of importance. I know Mayor Good has made it a priority of, I believe, speeding and law enforcement, and you know, happy to try and reinforce that message throughout the region, in Prescott and wherever else we can. So thank you.
Think if we can, somewhere along the line, can we add in the pressures of drivers around livestock, especially equestrian trails? These people need to be aware, don't pull up behind a horse and honk, you'll lose your headlights. It needs to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Councilman Armstrong, happy to include that in the rotation, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to Chairman Brown's comments that I've seen a lot of pedestrians that think once they're in a crosswalk, they're invulnerable. And they'll be dressed all in dark clothing at night. And it's difficult for drivers to even see that they're there. So I've seen a number of very close calls that I think may even have more of an impact on pedestrian safety than even just distracted driving. So maybe adding a variation of video development to address these different areas might even be more effective. I know that we're aggressively trying to put together image detection throughout Willow Creek Road, and then being able to connect those detection of vehicles and pedestrians and bicycles to the intersection lights, so that we can move traffic in a safe and effective manner. And if that is communicated to the drivers, they'll realize that if they do the speed limit, they'll be able to transit those intersections in a very safe and good flow of traffic. So that's a process we've been working on for a couple of years. And if the drivers realize that they can do that, then maybe they won't be switching lanes without signals and then being able to be the first one to wait at the next intersection as everybody else catches up with them. So I think the more we do that, and the more timing that maybe even ADOT will start cooperating on Highway 69 and some of those other areas, we can get people to realize that by following the speed limit, they'll get there faster, with less conflict and with less potential accidents. So I think those are all areas that we can probably include in the topics that Sparklight might be able to develop some additional video segments.
Mr. Chair and Mayor Good, absolutely. We'll include that as part of the campaign. I would make two offers, I guess, in that suggestion. Number one, we reinforce it in the active transportation plan, the bicycle pedestrian plan, to outline what Prescott's doing in their efforts. I think that's another good area. And then the other opportunity I would go ahead and put to all the municipalities here, that through our contract, if you wanted to add to our contract, and we can talk about this at a later date, you're more than welcome to add some dollars and be able to get additional videos for Prescott or anywhere. And I think, I want to say a few years ago, the sheriff's office did that for particular training. And we've worked with a couple other cities and towns in this contract over the years. So we're happy to follow up, and either we do it and or you work with us and you can get some additional videos as you referenced, but happy to make note of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Might be a good thing to contact the sheriff and PDs after this next couple of quarters. Say, what do you got thoughts in mind for some kind of video or something we put together?
That's a great idea.
They get a lot of money coming out of the governor's office.
Yeah. We'll follow up on that. Good idea. Thank you. Reviews.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 12-month extension, professional service agreement with Sparklight for the distracted driver education campaign for an additional 12 months.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
All right.
Moving on to item 12, discussion of possible action to appoint a new representative and alternative to the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC. Positions are effective January 1, 2023. Mr. Gallego.
Chair, members of the board, I'll turn this back over to you in just a minute. Just wanted to provide a little bit of background. Historically, as Kevin was talking earlier on behalf of the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, Kevin has a board, and the board is made up of a representative from each MPO and Council of Government board throughout Arizona. So I believe that's 10 MPOs and COGS in total. And put forth is a representative from the CYMPO board. Right now it is currently Supervisor Craig Brown with the alternate of Mayor John Hughes. I guess my closing comment would be, historically, even though we've provided the last, I think, 6 or so years of who has served on it, which areas have served on it, there's not a perfect science to the rotation. The boards previously have just had a discussion, which I know you'll do in a few minutes, but it seems like it comes down to more of availability and interest, of course. So it's not a perfect rotation that we try and get everybody in the rotation. One of the main reasons for that is prior to COVID, the RTAC meetings were held in person. I haven't talked to Kevin recently, but I do think there's probably some interest of making some more in-person meetings. Possibly, I know there's some events throughout the year where Kevin will host luncheons with legislators and so forth. So I know that was part of the discussion, but as it stands, you have Supervisor Brown as your representative and Mayor Hughes as the alternate. So with that said, turn it over to you to figure out what you want to do moving forward.
Thank you, sir. I think that this is a great opportunity to try to put some consistency in regard to the boards. And I haven't spoken to Member Hughes yet. He is the vice chair of RTAC, but I'd like to see Dewey Humboldt take on that role as the chair of RTAC with the anticipation of Vice Chair Brown. He's going to be our chair in January, and it'll almost be a stepping stone moving forward. Because historically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gallego, Dewey Humboldt hasn't had the representation or the leadership opportunities with CYMPO in both areas.
Correct, and I was going to address that on the next item. So you're right. I would say historically, the town of Chino Valley and the town of Dewey Humboldt prior to Councilman Armstrong, Mayor Hughes, previous representatives at the time did not express interest of serving, if you will, either RTAC and or vice chair and chair of CYMPO. Definitely were active participants, but they always felt that was not their particular thing. So that would be a fair statement with both RTAC and the other positions.
You know, and one of the things going back 8 or 9 years ago when we first did it, we tried to find somebody that had the time to come, because our meetings were not just down in Phoenix, they were at Flagstaff and other places as well. So we needed somebody that was able to take the time and the opportunity to go somewhere, didn't have their own job, let's say, or didn't impede on their performance, whatever assignment they might have. So I've always gone. So it doesn't matter to me because I would continue to go, just list nothing else. So with John taking this over, I think that's a good way to go, and then maybe bring somebody else in to learn the steps, learn the process, learn Kevin. So I think it's a good way to stage this moving forward. But remember, it does require some time. It's enough.
Well, with that being said, Mr. Hughes, I'm sorry, Member Hughes, you have any
I'm good to go with that. I'm all about it, trying to help out, and no problems here.
Is there any interest from the board for vice chair of RTAC?
I'll be happy to do it. I
Sounds
guess
like-
I'm happy to do it after you said that.
Is there any more comments in regards to this? With that being said, if I can get a motion for Member John Hughes to be chair of RTAC and Member Tom Armstrong to be vice chair.
So much.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Moving on.
Thank
Item
you, guys.
13, discussion and possible action to hold elections of officers for executive board chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer. Positions are also effective January 1st, 2023. Mr. Gallego?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. And again, I'll turn this over to you in just a moment. Just want to give you a little bit of background. I had Allison preparing your packets. An effort to look at the rotation just from the last 6 years. I know we had this discussion, I think about a year or so ago, again, trying to find a little bit more consistency if that was a thing. But again, I wanted to highlight, which the chair alluded to in the last item, to be able to give Mayor Hughes and Councilman Armstrong or Dewey Humboldt and the town of Chino Valley those opportunities to serve historically as the example of Mayor Nolan. When he was here, he wasn't interested again in serving as vice chair or chair. I think he did 1 year, but outside of that. And then the mayor of Chino Valley, same thing. So just to give those regions the opportunity. But I think in closing, traditionally, the board has chosen to elevate the vice chair to the chair and then have the discussions with that. So with that said, happy to turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I think moving forward on this, it's clear in regards to Vice Chair Brown moving to the chair position, but you specifically made the comment of positioning different towns and organizations for the future. We're not necessarily talking about where Tom Arnold will be or where John Hughes will be. I'm sorry, Tom Armstrong will be and John Hughes will be, but more necessarily where Dewey Humboldt will be, where Chino Valley will be in the future. So with that and historically how things have gone, I think it's time to reset. And from my point of view, I see a Chairman Brown, a Vice Chair John Hughes, and a Secretary Treasurer Bill Good to move forward for the next 2 years. That's just my thoughts, and I'll take comments from the rest of the board.
Well, the change on that really affects Mayor Good. So how do you feel about it, Phil?
Well, I think when you look at the historical positions, the secretary treasurer position has been held by the city of Prescott for 1, 2, 3, 4 out of those 6 years. I wouldn't mind participating as the vice chair, but I was looking at the positions that have been held. It seems like Chino Valley, Dewey Humboldt, probably would be considered for some of those positions. And usually vice chair moves the chair. So I don't know, Craig or you willing to move up chair or John.
I think it's, hasn't been any question that Chairman or Vice Chair Brown will be the chair effective January. Understanding that correctly. And this is going to be something that historically, the way it has been a certain way, but that's why I think it's a great opportunity for this board to do a reset and go from there and change things up for the future moving forward. And then eventually the Prescott seat in 2 years moves to the vice chair, and ultimately in 4 years will then be the chair. And then behind that, Chino Valley comes in, and then Prescott Valley resets and comes in. That's the thought in regards to that.
That's why I think maybe we should move forward with either Tom and or John sitting in that vice chair spot going forward, but it's up to Phil.
No, I don't mind doing another term as secretary treasurer. Haven't had to sign the check yet.
So Member Armstrong, with that being said, are you good with taking the back seat or Chino Valley taking the back seat for the next 2 years and then
That's fine.
moving in?
I'm happy to serve where needed. I think John is an excellent choice for vice chair at this time.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm willing to do it.
So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion for Chairman Brett or Vice Chair Brown to be the chair, Member John Hughes to be the vice chair, and Secretary Treasurer to remain Phil Good. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Can't make Gary unfortunately doesn't.
Aye.
Aye.
I can't. Supervisor Brown, you need to get closer to the microphone. I can't hear you at all.
That's a first.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Item 14, discussion of possible action to approve the 2023 executive board meeting.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you have a tentative calendar in your packet. The CYMPO board historically has not met in January and December, leaving you 10 months. On an average year, I would say you would end up having 5 to 7 meetings. We have found, and you have told us, at least in the past, that it's always better to schedule the meetings. And if we need to cancel them, then cancel them, then the reverse. So we've done that historically. We have scheduled 10 months worth of meetings. We do end up canceling a couple months for the purposes of efficiency. We never want to have a meeting just to have a meeting and just provide updates. We want to be sure that it's the best use of everyone's time. So that again would be our intent this year. It would be the third Wednesday of each month. The time is at 3 p.m. What you have listed here, I will say this past year, Chair Palguda made the recommendation of traveling to different locations. It was the first time that CYMPO did it. And looking back, at least from a staff standpoint, I think there was probably some positives and a few challenges. The positives was to be able to come to each area and be able to allow for maybe additional staff and public to participate. We tried to visit each area. The challenges that we faced is each of your areas have unique audio-visual capabilities, and really want to again thank Allison for trying to make things as smooth as possible. But you've all attended these meetings where Gary Knight's leaning in, trying to hear what we're saying, and sometimes it's because we can't use the in-house microphone system because it's not compatible with Zoom and vice versa. So we've worked through those issues. You know, I will say, and not to put any area on the spot, but by far the city of Prescott was the best as far as having the staff resources to help us when we got there to run the audio visual. So that was by far incredibly helpful. Where we walked in, they ran the videos, the audio. I believe Gary sent me a message, you could hear the best there, and that's always a challenge. So with that said, the things for your discussion again is the calendar itself, but moving forward about the rotation of the different areas. And if that is your direction, then again, Allison will work with you and your staff to schedule. We tried this past year to schedule at least one visit to each area. It just happened that Dewey Humboldt, even though John was prepared for us, we ended up canceling both those meetings. So We were in Chino Valley twice, Prescott Valley twice, City of Prescott once, and Yavapai County, I believe, once or twice. So with that said, Mr. Chair, turn it back over to you for your discussion.
I always knew that the first year we were gonna have to work out some kinks, and I think now that we recognize what the capabilities are and are not of each organization, I think second year is gonna be a little bit better, at least we know what we're getting into. I think moving around to the different communities is also positive. That's just my thought.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Moving it around is nice. Obviously, John's the one that's kind of gets left out. Am I right?
Well, it's just the way the scheduling worked for meetings, it was fine. We're ready.
Oh.
We're ready anytime.
Just for clarification, we were scheduled to be there and John had worked with us and prepared everything. It just so happened that the meeting ended up getting canceled because business was not ready at that time, Supervisor Brown. We were scheduled to be in doing them.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be the case, and no problem. That just continue to rotate it in some kind of manner for everybody. However, I would like to add to the calendar. I'd like to add a meeting in January. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because we normally don't. That we are moving forward with a new legislature and new people in that legislature. They're going to be starting up. We want to be right there, joining with them, cast them as much as we possibly can. So missing January, I'd rather miss August than January.
I think that's a very salient point, Supervisor Brown. John Hughes and Dewey Humboldt, you don't have to wait until you build a new city hall. We in Prescott will have a new city hall. It's taking quite a bit longer than we anticipated to be able to prepare it. So I'm still in the old city hall, seems like by myself, and it echoes through the hallways there. But we expect at least the staff to be in by the end of the year. And I think we'll have our new council chambers ready by probably Q1 of 23. So at least for consideration of Prescott's rotation, probably Q2 would be more likely. And I think we'll even have a better video and participation, remote participation capabilities than we had before.
So I think we're all in agreement that the rotating through the communities is a good. So with that being said, if there's nothing else to add, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion.
Clarification, are we going to add? another
Yes.
one in
Yes,
January?
that's what my motion is.
All right, let's hear it, Member Hughes.
Make a motion to approve the executive board meeting schedule for 2023 with an additional meeting in January.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
All
opposed?
right,
All right, moving on. Item 15, ADOT Northwest District Report. Mr. Rosick.
Absent.
Absent. We're not having, there's no one taking that place. Moving on then. Item 16, State Transportation Board Report. Mr. Knight, you're up.
thank you. Actually, there is nothing on this Friday's agenda for the Transportation Board that has anything to do with CYMPO. There's no projects for approval for the board at this point in time. So basically, I really don't have anything to report other than that the meeting will be Friday, 9 a.m. virtual or in person in the town of Wickenburg.
All right, do you have anything for Mr. Knight?
What was that?
I was just asking if we had any questions for you, sir.
Oh. Yeah, any questions?
Gary, is there been any talk amongst the board members? I don't know if you can tell us or not because the meeting laws.
You're gonna have to speak into the microphone.
What are their thoughts in regards to the new election of the new legislature? Do they look forward to working with the new transportation chair, or do you see difficulty again?
I think it's a little premature right now. Maybe when we get together Thursday evening and of course at the meeting on Friday, we'll have more information on that. But right now, I don't have anything to share with you in that respect.
Not your cheery self.
Anything else for Ms. Benet? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. All in favor, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Thanks for coming out, everyone.
If we can get the board members to take a picture with Allison.